All right, man, peace. So many of you brothers may have heard by now that there's a new narrative making the rounds across the NBA media revolving around Mr. Kawhi Leonard, his agent, aka Uncle Dennis, the LA Clippers, the LA Lakers, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Toronto Raptors. And the narrative is pertaining to the notion that Kawhi Leonard is basically the basketball version of Donald Trump. He requires quid pro quo in order to do business with him, except it has to be quid pro quo under the table as stipulated by Mr. Uncle Dennis, aka his agent. Why is this a story that is coming out now all of a sudden when we've known about the rumblings of this since this past summer via Mr. Stephen A. Smith and other members of the NBA media who've been tracking Kawhi Leonard's movements? The reason why I believe they're trying to amplify this narrative, this storyline right now, is because they're starting to notice that the Lakers are beginning to falter. So they want to see if they can crack Kawhi Leonard a little bit. How is he going to respond when they start to ask him questions about exactly what the overall tenor of the negotiations between himself and the LA Clippers was? Because they're still very upset that he decided to not sign on the Lakers and help their boo thing, LeBron James, try to win another NBA championship. What they really want is for the Lakers to win a championship, and that can slide right into this next summer in assisting LeBron James in promoting his new Space Jam film as he continues to try to poach from the legacy of Michael Jordan. I think that it's starting to become apparent to many other people beside myself that what I've been stating about the Lakers for a while is beginning to come to fruition. They're more like a cubic zirconia. They're not a diamond. And I think that many people are beginning to wonder whether or not they're going to make it through this regular season without a debilitating injury to one of their two major stars, that being LeBron James, who's pushing 35 years old but has the mileage of a 42-year-old NBA player, and Anthony Davis, who we all know, if the wind blows too hard, he might break an elbow or tear a ligament in his knee or in his foot. He's like the basketball version of Keith one-time Thurman. But once again, this is really about Kawhi. The NBA media knows how dangerous Kawhi Leonard is. They know that he's pretty much the main entity that's standing in between LeBron James and the championship, because I don't think that they're that worried about Giannis yet. They also are not going to count on the Houston Rockets coming up big in the playoffs, especially with that dynamic but low basketball IQ having backcourt of theirs starring Mr. James Harden and Russell Westbrook. So once again, how can we break down Kawhi? Can we try to imply that there were some dirty dealings when it came to him signing with the Clippers? At the end of the day, whatever he and his uncle negotiated is their business. And as long as nothing can be proven, it's not a big deal. I can promise you that every major NBA free agent is receiving some funds under the table. I promise you that when the Golden State Warriors tried to negotiate with Kevin Durant, first to come to the Golden State Warriors, and even as he was a free agent in this past summer, they were trying to offer him access to certain revenue streams and financial avenues that he may have not been aware of. That is part of the business. So is this a big deal to me? No, it is not. It's just sour grapes that the homecoming queen, Mr. Kawhi Leonard, got away. He had a lot of suitors. All of them failed other than the team that he always wanted to go to, that being the LA Clippers. So, of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
A story posted Monday in The Athletic said Kawhi Leonard's uncle, Dennis Robertson, asked team officials interested in signing Kawhi for part ownership of the team, use of a private plane at all times, a house, and a guaranteed amount of off-court endorsement money. The NBA investigated these allegations and found no wrongdoing.
So if the NBA investigated these allegations and found no wrongdoing, why is this a story for? You know, in boxing, there's a negotiating tactic where if a fighter does not truly want to fight another fighter, they'll normally offer them a certain purse amount that they know that other fighter will not accept. For example, Terrence Crawford and Bob Arum offered Danny Garcia a certain purse amount that they knew he would not accept because they always wanted to fight Amir Khan the whole time. Could it be that Kawhi Leonard, knowing that he did not want to go back to the Toronto Raptors, knowing that he was trying to use the Lakers as leverage against the Clippers, asked them to provide him with exorbitant demands, hoping that those demands will push them out of the equation, while also accentuating to the Clippers that you better get this trade for Paul George done or I'm not going to come here? Could that possibly be what it was? At the end of the day, even if Kawhi Leonard was able to get certain extra amenities under the table, great for him. The owner of the Clippers is a multi-billionaire. He can afford it.
Shoot for the moon, right? You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. Stephen A., what does this story say about Kawhi?
It says he better get the job done with the Los Angeles Clippers.
No, what it really says is that Kawhi Leonard is a stone-cold assassin both on the court and at the negotiating table, and that he played a bevy of franchises for fools, and that's why they're upset with him.
It's really, really nice that you piggybacked off the greatness of the San Antonio Spurs and got yourself a championship. And I don't mean that disrespectfully.
Yes, you do, because what you said was just very disrespectful. How could he be piggybacking off of the San Antonio Spurs when he won a championship with the Toronto Raptors?
He made an incredible contribution. He was a young phenom, a defensive ace, and what have you. Wasn't considered an offensive juggernaut of a player at that particular time. Go.
Stephen A. Smith, we're not talking about 2014, brother. We're talking about 2019. Let's get caught up to the modern era. Knock it off.
Toronto captures a second NBA championship. We know he carried that franchise to a championship. Okay, we got to give mad love and respect and credit to him.
And even back in 2014, Kawhi played exemplary defense on LeBron James, to the point where he was so highly touted in the subsequent seasons that he was able to win back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards. So let's pump the brakes a little bit.
It's due, even though we all know what would have happened if Kevin Durant were healthy. They'd have lost in 5, might have got swept. Having said all of that, this is the reality of the situation. I came on, if you recall, Max, when this happened months ago, when he signed first with the Clippers, Max and Molly. And I reported how the Lakers as an organization were taken aback at the demands that were being made by Kawhi Leonard.
Because Kawhi did not want to sign there after LeBron James was already there. In the same way Paul George alleged to want to be with the Lakers until he found out that LeBron James was there. That is why he became confederate with Kawhi in joining the Clippers. That's what that was really about. For example, if a badass chick wants to ask you out on a date, you're going to accept for far less reasons than if a big body chick that you might not find attractive, if you don't find big body chicks attractive and want to ask you out, you're going to make far greater demands than you would of a chick that you found more attractive. It's the same thing in negotiations and free agency. Kawhi Leonard has the right to try to force teams that he does not want to sign with to provide him with exorbitant amenities so that they can compensate him for coming to a location that he might not want to go to.
He was making, his uncle, Dennis Robinson, was...
You reported this at the time as it was happening.
At the time that it was happening. Also, I happen to know for a fact that when he also told the Toronto Raptors, I'd be interested in staying, but you need to get Paul George in order for me to stay in Toronto, knowing that in order to make that happen, you would have had to give up a slew of picks, not to mention Pascal Siakam.
You mean the same slew of picks that the LA Clippers gave up? At the end of the day, as long as he made the same request or the same demand to both teams, what's the big deal?
Which Masai Ujiri did not want to do.
Okay, so no Kawhi.
As a result, it was all believed at the end of the day by the Lakers to be a smokescreen. You really was intending to go to the Clippers. Jerry West and Doc Rivers and those boys were incredibly confident you were going to go to the Los Angeles Clippers, and essentially the Lakers were left holding the bag, being delayed, being compromised in free agency at the time because they were waiting for a decision from you.
You mean the same LA Lakers who were able to use LeBron James' relationship with his agent, Rich Paul, and the understanding that Anthony Davis always admired LeBron James from childhood, to finagle a deal that pretty much forced the hand of the New Orleans Pelicans to trade the best player in the history of their franchise to the LA Lakers for some relatively unproven assets. I think the Lakers should be very happy with what they got and just stand pat and fall back. Let's leave everything in the past. You'll have a chance to square everything away out there on the dance floor. I believe the Lakers are starting to feel less confident in their abilities to win in the long run, and now they're trying to put forth a lot of these rumblings through their agents in the media to see if they can destabilize the Clippers mentally.
And what I'm saying to you is that these requests were in violation of the collective bargaining agreement.
You mean these alleged requests? Because as the NBA stated, they found no proof, no verification, no validation of any of your allegations. I'm not saying that these things did not actually occur. I'm just saying what the NBA is stating in regards to the results of their investigations.
Considered illegal. The Lakers,
Kawhi, the investigation has turned up nothing.
The investigation has turned up nothing because, again, unless the phone conversation is taped or what have you, it's their word against yours, and you can't really prove it. But it didn't stop Adam Silver in Board of Governor meetings, along with various other individuals, highlighting that there would be a focus on actions during free agency, even seeking the help of the Players Association, asking them to get involved in sort of policing folks who are trying to make side deals, making sure that the agent in question is a certified agent and that's the only person communicating with the teams, that nobody else be allowed to. Audit power, where you can sit up there and look into folks' books to see what's going on under the table.
It's amazing that whenever an athlete has a quote-unquote black agent, we have to ask questions of how certified they are, especially when so many of these black agents are starting to get their clients major deals.
Kind of things. In the end, Kawhi could be quiet. He could be somebody that's considered that assassin, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, all of this has to be for something. And the something needs to be, I'm trying to deliver a chip, which obviously he's doing. He's averaging 25 a game, 25, 6, and 7. So
Stephen A. Smith, let's not forget that he's also ranked top 3 the last time I checked in defensive rating.
This is what it comes down to. And I don't think any aspersions should be cast on Kawhi Leonard.
You pretty much spent the last 2 minutes casting aspersions on Kawhi Leonard.
Folks are looking at his uncle, his representation, led by his uncle, and obviously they're trying to make some noise about it. Even though this has been reported for months, the bottom line is it's something that still has a few folks in the NBA very, very salty, Max, about how things transpire.
I believe that the Lakers really wanted to let this entire storyline marinate as late as they could and try to spring it on the Clippers and Kawhi, hopefully late into the season, going into the playoffs, and see if it could possibly cause a distraction for them. But they say, you know what? The Christmas game is coming up. We need the Lakers to defeat the Clippers to try to show the city of LA and the Clippers that we're a real team, that we're here to stay. Right now, the Lakers are reeling. They've lost their last 3 games. It looks as if LeBron James and Anthony Davis may be starting to break down, playing at that level of intensity for the first 25 games of the season, acting as if every game was game 7. They're already starting to break down. So they need to put a story out there to show the NBA fans and the media at large, remember what Kawhi did to us. So just in case we lose this game today, don't focus on that. Focus on what Kawhi Leonard did to us. And the league should be trying to bring forth some type of sanctions against the Clippers. The Lakers are starting to feel the heat. I'm talking about their organization, their franchise. They're starting to feel the heat from the Clippers and Kawhi.
2 points here.
Sure.
One, when you make a decision about something big in your life, there may not be one determining factor. I mean, it may be something that tips it, or the most important thing to you in the hierarchy of what you want. But there are many things there are several things you may be interested in. Mm-hmm. I think in Kawhi's case, what this reveals is he wanted to be in Southern California, and he wanted to win he wanted to be competitive for championships, right? That was important to him.
And he also wanted to make sure that he was not going to be a member of a stacked team. He wants to be the alpha on a championship level team.
But since he wants to be in Southern California, if the reporting is true, then of course when you deal with the Raptors, you're going to say, well, if you can give me X, Y, and Z, I need more from you in certain ways than I need from, say, the Clippers. And the same, I would say, applies to the Lakers, because Kawhi saved basketball. He saved basketball. He knew something very important. Look, when AD came on this show, what did he say? He said he got on LeBron about his defense. He challenged him. And LeBron has risen, for the most part, to the challenge. And when your leader said AD on this show plays defense, it sets the tone for everybody else, right? You think LeBron would get any credit for that if Kawhi was on the team? Like, of course we know if Kawhi was on the Lakers, no one would stand a chance, right? LeBron, AD, and Kawhi, the season's over, why even play it? So there's the competitive issue. But it even helps LeBron and AD in a way, because they'll now get credit for things. If it's not like the Warriors with KD, where...
I agree. I cannot tell you how much I agree with what Max Kellerman is saying right here. They really should be thanking Kawhi Leonard for what he did. Because it's almost like you're in a relationship with someone who you should not be with, and they're the ones who decide to end the relationship, and you've always understood that that person was not for you anyway. They had you thinking about things and conducting yourself in a manner that was unbecoming to who you are as a person. but you just did not have the wherewithal or maybe the life experience to say, me and this person don't belong together. Kawhi Leonard did the Lakers a favor. He helped them understand that if you're going to win a championship, it would be better for you if I was not here, because it would allow you to actually add on to your legacies in a far more healthy way. Now LeBron James, if he wins a 4th championship, there won't be people who say that he was riding Kawhi Leonard's coattails, which they would have been saying had Kawhi signed with that team. Now, if Anthony Davis wins a chip, he no longer has to worry about being told that when it comes to team achievements, he has underwhelmed or underperformed. He'll be viewed as the guy who helped to save LeBron as a tandem.
First, they're supposed to win. So Kawhi looked at the Lakers and understood intuitively or maybe consciously, we're not. What does that really prove if I go to the Lakers? Sure, I want to be in Southern California. Sure, I want to win championships. But if I go to the Lakers, I'm not really proving what I need to prove. So I need more from the Lakers. I need more from the Raptors.
Kawhi knows that he's like a boxer who won a vacant title last year. He wants to defeat who everyone views as the champion. LeBron James, even though he hasn't won a championship in 3 going on 4 years, most of the NBA media still views him as the occupier of the quote-unquote throne. Kawhi wants to end all of that sentiment. He wants to go head-to-head to show people that, yes, I won the vacant title, but I'm also better than the guy that all of you guys say is the greatest champion or one of the greatest champions in history.
I don't need the same thing from the Clippers. That's really where I want to go, provided they can get me Paul George, because I want to compete for championships. That's the first point. The next point about the CBA, that being a violation of the CBA, Adam Silver should understand, I'm sure he does. When you artificially limit what players can make, when you have players like LeBron or Kawhi who are worth multiples of what they're getting paid.
Absolutely. That's why, once again, I have no problem with quote-unquote quid pro quo or under-the-table deals, because these guys are getting $35 to $40 million a year. Steve Ballmer is worth what, $40 to $50 billion? And on top of that, the Clippers, as an organization, as a franchise, are going to become a $1 billion enterprise for him because he has Kawhi Leonard. If all Kawhi Leonard asks for is $100 million under the table and maybe his own personal airplane or helicopter, what's the big deal?
An artificial limit on the heights that they can reach in terms of their salary, that money, because the league is awash in money, is going to find its way toward a competitive advantage. So what happened with the new CBA and all the new TV money? Coaches' salaries exploded. Know why? Because owners who are competitive, really salary caps keep owners from spending, they think, irrationally. It caps their competitive juices, because now you can't just overpay and have a loaded salary that's worth more than it really should be. So that money that they can't go to the players, it'll go to coaches, it'll go to side deals with use of private planes. That money is going to find its way to teams for competitive advantages.
No, you can't say that. That's with all due respect, that's a very irresponsible thing to say. And I'm going to tell you.
No, it's not. It's a very realistic thing to say.
Why? Because all things are not equal. Mark Cuban, Paul Allen got arrested.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, aren't you the guy who said that you're a proud capitalist? In a capitalistic society, it's not about equality. It's about what you have to start off with, and also how your brain works to be able to maximize what you have to turn it into something better. At the end of the day, it's not Steve Ballmer's fault that he's worth $50 billion and some of these other owners are only worth $2 or $3 billion. That's a them problem.
Oh, people like that. You know, certain people have more money than others.
Yes.
So you're talking about equitable, and fair balancing. That's number one. Number two.
He's talking about equitable and fair balancing as it has been negotiated by the NBA Players Association and the commissioner. But as he's already stated, there's terrain that cannot be policed. And that's where whoever has more money can come to the forefront.
League can't ignore that, because again, if you can make side deals, then obviously there is no cap, and as a result you can.
No, not necessarily. It doesn't mean that. If you can make side deals, then it starts to come down to who has more to offer, and in the athlete's mind, what's the most advantageous thing for him to do. Just because, say, the Miami Heat can offer you a bigger side deal than the LA Clippers does not mean that you're going to go to the Miami Heat. You might, but there are other factors that are going to come into play.
your way to navigate yourself or circumvent rules and regulations. So then you're talking about the wild, wild west, per se, no pun intended. You're just basically saying, hey, do what the hell you want to do as long as you don't get busted. It's all cool. Adam Silver can't have that kind of mentality.
No. I'm not suggesting that Adam Silver turn a blind eye.
Well,
but you have to be, like, in other words, you have to understand the consequence. When prohibition was the law, there were speakeasies like that. People wanted to drink. That's going to find its way. So,
and then people got to pay the price when they got caught.
Again, I'm not suggesting that Adam Silver simply ignore rules violations, but he, as I said, he must be aware, he's a smart guy, that this is what's going to happen. But some teams will build new facilities to entice. Some people will give you some private planes. Some people will get better coaches.
Some teams will offer you all the broads you can handle. No, don't sleep on that. Especially when it comes to teams like the Miami Heat, LA, Houston. They have stables of broads out there. Don't get it twisted. You know, some people might say, well, why would a professional athlete need assistance or help with that? A lot of these females that hover around these franchises are beta program sex kittens. For years, the LA Lakers had access to beta program sex kittens through Jerry Buss. Allegedly. Of course, what I'm saying right now is alleged. Jerry Buss, very close friends with Hugh Hefner.
Also got to take into account this too, Max. It's especially you got to be especially careful about saying something like that in the LA market. The Busses have money because of the Lakers.
No doubt.
Ballmer has money because of Ballmer. I mean, Ballmer can buy practically.
There goes a beta program sex kitten right there, Miss Jeannie Buss. Of course, allegedly.
Every damn team.
Yeah, because he was the eighth guy in the garage when someone came up with a good idea.
I mean, my God, the man is worth tens of billions of dollars. I mean, whether it's 30, 40, or 60 billion, he's worth somewhere around there, man. And so, again, the Lakers can't compete with that on a fair, equitable play. They can't do that.
What do you notice? As a result of what you're talking about, the Clippers have come up in the world.
Exactly.
No. That's due in large part to the incompetence of Jim Buss, more so than anything else.
Not true. Not true. The Clippers have come up because there's certainly an atmospheric change when it comes to their franchise and how they're viewed. And a lot of that is associated not only with Steve Ballmer and the exuberance with which he seems to conduct himself when it comes to basketball operations, but also the fact that the players know that his cash flow is limitless.
Wasn't because of a financial advantage the Clippers had over the Lakers.
That would be fair during the Blake Griffin era. That era is over. They tore it down. What's the first thing Ballmer did? Perfect. What's the first thing he did? He paid through the teeth to get Doc Rivers. This proves my point. He went. The
Ballmer inherited Doc Rivers and re-signed him up for about $10 million
for $10 million a year.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is, coaches at that particular moment in time, Max was getting like 7 or 8.
But
he's saying he had the extra cash to get the job done, and he had an advantage.
But it's just a couple $1 million.
Well, okay, but that's a different.
It's a couple $1 million. You might say that, Stephen A. Smith, because supposedly you're getting $8 million a year. So what's a couple mil to you? But, you know, in other environments, that's a big deal. If you can get $10 million a year and you're Doc Rivers, and the next coach, the next highest paid coach, is only getting 7.5 mil, that's huge.
Keeping Doc Rivers and not keeping Doc Rivers. So the Clippers have a coaching advantage. The Clippers also have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and part of that is because they're now an attractive destination. People aren't shooting down deals to the Clippers. So what you're talking about Ballmer's pockets giving the Clippers an advantage over the Busses, they do. It does. It does give them an advantage.
But what I'm saying is those advantages, as long as it's legit and legal, are fine. What you can't have is a situation where guys are able to circumvent clear rules and regulations.
Right, but Stephen A., what does that really mean? You know, I know, everybody knows that with greater wealth or, you know, greater financial resources, you have greater access, even if you don't necessarily spend the money on the thing that you're getting access to. For example, if a woman knows that you have a great job and sees that you're in a nice car, she's more likely to take you seriously, even if you don't spend any more money on her than a dude who just works a regular 9-to-5 is going to spend on her. It's just the appearance of having more cash flow that's going to attract people. So that's just a part of what has to be dealt with in an openly capitalistic society, even when you have an artificial cap on the overall NBA business enterprise or the processes that entail being a part of the NBA business world. Players are going to be more attracted to Steve Ballmer because of the opportunities, just the perception with him being the richest owner in the NBA. You can't police that.
Excuse me, you're not allowed to do this, but you're trying to do it anyway.
Here's the problem.
You do that, it's going to be problematic,
Here's the problem.
and the league's going to be the hammer down on you.
Here's the problem.
And I'm not...
Only if they can catch him. Like Denzel said in Training Day, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Clippers did any of this. I'm telling you that this is what the Lakers have basically allowed to be leaked out of what they believe.
Yeah, because they're bitter. And that's because the Lakers understand that when Kawhi signed with the Clippers, LeBron and AD and the Lakers getting another championship no longer was promised.
This is
they talk about what happened with
the
them.
consequence of making rules that are basically unfair, like capping what the players can make, like prohibition, is that you get what's called a black market. You get an underground economy. And that's what's happening now. And to your point,
What's the black market here?
Hello? Are you paying attention to the topic of the conversation? The black market is that Kawhi Leonard and his uncle can go to Steve Ballmer and say, I'll come here as long as you give me $100 million check under the table. As long as you give me a private plane. Are you not paying attention to the damn topic, Molly Karam?
private plane use,
Okay.
little side deals. Here's the consequence. This is what you said earlier. Prove it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Prove it. So Adam Silver can look at it, but the investigation turned up.
Well,
Let me ask you your personal opinion. You think that Uncle Dennis was looking for side deals? I think
course.
yeah, sure.
Of
Well,
course
if he knows what he's doing, right?
Okay.
Thank you. In other words, Max Kellerman is letting it be known. When I'm a free agent, if Fox Sports 1 says, hey, we're going to send you this little bit under the table, he's going to Fox Sports 1. That's part of being a free agent. There's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, everybody's going to offer perks if they want you bad enough.
Did the investigation turn up anything?
No, it didn't turn up anything, but it's
So that means that Uncle Dennis did his job very well. No paper trail.
Kawhi Leonard getting those things.
You can't really stop
It's
it.
Kawhi Leonard getting those things.
I don't know.
You can monitor whether or not he's getting those
Well,
things.
you can monitor.
What do you think? Gonna check his bank records? Let's check to see if he submitted a check for $100 million.
He gets a piece of the team, but you can't monitor handshake agreements.
Right.
Like, you can't.
Yeah, but this was just a conversation. Obviously, it never came to fruition. He didn't even go to the Lakers.
Right, but we don't know what he's getting at the Clippers.
Exactly. Molly Karen, what's up with this broad?
Like, you assume everything. The assumption that the
I think he got
responsible
Paul
assumption
George, and
is
he was happy with that.
responsible
Paul
assumption,
George,
by the way,
and he got
everything's
Dr.
above board.
And he's
By the way,
from
not necessarily the
Southern,
case.
he's from
never
Southern
going back to
California.
Toronto. He was never going back to Toronto. He was just giving them lip service. He wanted to be in Southern California. It was going to be the Lakers or the Clippers, and that's why the Clippers traded 5 first-round
One
picks.
thing-
I disagree with that. I think that Kawhi was going to go to whatever team listened to him and traded for Paul George. If the Clippers were unable to get Paul George, Kawhi was not going to go there because he was not going to go there by himself. I believe that he had an under-the-table deal. Since we're talking about under-the-table deals, I believe that he had an under-the-table deal with Paul George, maybe going back into last season in the regular season. And he might have seen Paul balling, because remember, there was a portion of the season where Paul George was the front runner for the MVP award. And Kawhi might have called him up and said, bro, look, if things don't work out with you there, I'm going to try to have whatever team I sign with trade for you. And Paul George might have said, okay, bet. But I promise you, he didn't just call him up this past summer. They were working on this for a while.
All of that to get Paul George because they knew he was going to the Lakers if they had not
One
done
thing
that.
real quick. When
Yes,
Uncle
sir.
Dennis's name came up originally, I said this is show business, not show family for a reason. I was wrong. Uncle Dennis appears to know what he's doing. Look at the position Kawhi Leonard's in.
Cool.
Well, good for you for acknowledging that, Max Kellerman. A lot of other people have to acknowledge that. Like I've already stated, it seems very strange as soon as you're a quote-unquote black agent, especially one that's great at your job, people are starting to wonder, is he valid? Was he able to be properly accredited as an agent? Because they're getting fleeced by some of these guys now, whether it be Rich Paul or Uncle Dennis. Like, what's going on here?
And somebody you want somebody you can trust in your corner. All right.
But anyway, that's basically it on that, brothers. We'll see where this story goes. I predict that it's not going to go anywhere because I believe that Uncle Dennis was professional enough to not leave a paper trail or a digital trail And we know Kawhi Leonard ain't going to say shit. But anyway, peace.